Welcome back, everybody. We're diving into our 8th presidential inaugural address, and this time we're heading back to 1817 to check out James Monroe's first speech as president.
You know, Monroe's inauguration really marks this crucial point in American history. Yeah, I mean, he comes into office right after the War of 1812, at the very start of what we call the era of good feelings.
The era of good feelings, huh? Sounds pretty idyllic.
Right.
But was it really all sunshine and roses back then?
Well, not entirely.
Okay.
There were definitely some challenges brewing under the surface, like serious divisions over things like slavery and what the role of the federal government should even be.
Right.
Just to name a couple.
Yeah, makes sense.
But compared to all the crazy partisan battles of the previous decades, this period did have a distinct feeling of national unity and optimism.
I see.
And Monroe's speech really captures that spirit in many ways.
Now, to really break down this moment in history, we've got a special guest with us.
Absolutely.
Dr. Jareau Almeyda.
It's a pleasure to have him.
Now, you might be surprised to hear that Dr. Almeyda isn't a historian.
That's right.
He's actually a senior business manager. But here's the twist.
Go on.
He also has a PhD in information systems. And his dissertation involved some seriously cutting-edge analysis of qualitative data.
That's right.
So he's bringing a totally unique perspective to this deep dive.
Absolutely. Dr. Almeyda's combined that traditional historical analysis with some really advanced data science techniques to uncover fascinating patterns and insights within Monroe's speech.
Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of the speech itself, let's paint a picture of what was going on back in 1817.
All right.
America's still a young nation figuring things out on the world stage.
Yeah.
The War of 1812 is still fresh in everyone's minds.
For sure.
The Federalist Party, who weren't too keen on that whole war thing,
Right.
they're starting to fade from the political scene.
Yeah.
And there's this new feeling of national unity in the air. Maybe a little fragile, but it's there. What else was happening that might have influenced what Monroe had to say?
Well, one big factor was the population boom that was going on.
Population boom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Between 1800 and 1820, the U.S. population almost doubled, fueled largely by westward expansion.
Wow, doubled in just 20 years.
So pretty remarkable.
That must created a whole slew of new challenges and opportunities.
Absolutely.
Did Monroe address this growth directly in his speech?
He did, and it's reflected in several key themes, especially his focus on developing infrastructure and expanding the economy.
I see. So picture this.
Okay.
A mild March day in Washington, D.C.
All right.
And get this. Monroe delivered his address outdoors to the biggest crowd the country had ever seen.
Wow.
The excitement must have been palpable.
Oh, I bet.
And this speech is kicking off what we now call the era of good feelings.
Setting the stage.
Little pressure.
Maybe just a little.
I mean, Monroe was following in the footsteps of some pretty big names.
That's true.
Washington, Jefferson, Madison.
Huge shoes to fill.
He was the last of the Virginia dynasty presidents.
Right. 4 presidents in a row, all from the same state.
That's a pretty remarkable run.
It is.
Did all that concentrated power cause any tension or resentment from other states?
It's a great question. And it's definitely something that Monroe seemed to be aware of.
Yeah.
He really hammered home the importance of national unity and cooperation throughout his speech.
Okay, so let's dive into the speech itself.
Let's do it.
This wasn't just a quick little hello and goodbye.
Nope.
It was a whopping 300 words long,
That's a lot of words.
spread out over 123 sentences.
Wow.
To put that into perspective,
Okay.
that's longer than the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution combined.
That's quite a speech.
But here's where Dr. Almeyda's analysis gets really fascinating.
Go on.
He points out that the length of this speech actually lines up almost perfectly with the percentage of electoral votes that Monroe won,
Oh, really?
around 69%.
Interesting.
Hold on. Are you saying the length of this whole thing was a strategic move?
Like a way to show off his huge electoral win.
It's definitely a possibility.
That's some serious political strategy.
Whether it was intentional or not, the length definitely says something about Monroe's speaking style.
Yeah.
And maybe even what the audience expected back then.
Right.
People clearly had the time and attention span for a long and detailed address.
And speaking of details, Dr. Almeyda really dug into the language and structure of this speech.
You did.
He used something called sentiment analysis to map out what he calls the emotional architecture of the address.
That's a fascinating concept.
Can you break that down for us?
Sure.
What does emotional architecture even mean?
So it's a way of looking at how a speech is put together to make the audience feel certain emotions and react in certain ways.
Okay.
Dr. Almeyda found that Monroe's speech starts off with a good dose of humility.
Humility.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He acknowledges that he's not perfect and that the nation's facing some tough challenges.
So he's not coming in all mission accomplished. Like,
Not at all.
he's more like cautiously optimistic, you know?
Yeah.
Admitting there's still work to be done.
Humility, okay, so that's the foundation.
Right.
What's the next layer of this emotional architecture?
Well, from that base of humility, the speech builds up to a feeling of confidence as Monroe lays out his vision for America's future.
Okay.
He highlights all the great things the nation's accomplished and says he believes in its huge potential.
I like it.
And this is where Dr. Almeyda's keyword analysis really comes in handy.
Keyword analysis, tell me more.
So Dr. Almeyda picked out several keywords that pop up again and again throughout the speech. And they point to some really key themes.
Like what?
For instance, words like union, people, and citizens are repeated multiple times.
Got it.
This shows just how much Monroe wanted to emphasize national unity and how important it is for people to be involved in their government.
It's like he's trying to weave together this tapestry of shared identity,
Exactly.
reminding Americans that they're part of something bigger than themselves.
Absolutely.
I love that.
And then as the speech goes on, there's a noticeable shift towards a more joyful tone.
Oh.
Yeah, especially when Monroe starts talking about westward expansion and America's destiny to stretch across the continent.
Ah, manifest destiny in action.
You can practically hear the crowd getting fired up as he talks about America reaching from sea to shining sea.
I bet that must have been a moment of pure patriotic fervor.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
And this is where Dr. Almeyda's sentiment analysis really shines.
How so?
He's been able to track the emotional arc of the speech,
Oh, wow.
showing how Monroe takes the audience on a journey through humility, then to confidence, and finally to this feeling of joy and national pride.
It's amazing how a speech given over 200 years ago can still make us feel such strong emotions today.
It really is remarkable.
But it's not all sunshine and rainbows, is it?
You're right.
Even during this so-called era of good feelings, there are to be some shadows lurking beneath the surface.
Exactly, and that's what we'll explore next time.
Ooh, cliffhanger.
We'll dig into those challenges Monroe faced, both at home and abroad, and how his speech tried to address them.
Can't wait.
It's going to be good.
All right, we'll be back after the break.
Let's take a quick break. Want to equip your child with the skills of top global consultants? Don't let them fall behind. Raising Tomorrow's Leaders, The Consultant's Mindset by Dr. Jareau Almeyda is your guide to fostering essential skills in your children for their lifelong success. Available now on Amazon.
Welcome back to our deep dive into James Monroe's First Inaugural Address.
So before the break, we were talking about that emotional architecture in Monroe's speech,
Yeah.
like how he walks the listener through those different feelings.
Exactly.
You know, starting with humility, then building to confidence, even touching on joy.
That's quite a journey.
But you also pointed out that even during this so-called era of good feelings,
Right.
there were some shadows lurking beneath the surface.
Yeah, while Monroe's speech does project this image of unity and optimism, Dr. Almeyda's analysis also uncovers some pretty fascinating contradictions and tensions in the text.
For example, I noticed in Dr. Almeyda's notes that a big chunk of this era of good feeling speech is actually dedicated to military preparedness.
You're absolutely right.
It's kind of interesting.
Almost 15% of the speech is focused on the need for a strong national defense.
Makes you wonder if under that surface of national unity,
Yeah,
there was a sense of unease,
definitely possible.
maybe even a little bit of paranoia.
I mean, think about it. The War of 1812 had just happened.
Right.
They were still dealing with the aftermath.
It exposed some serious weaknesses in America's defenses.
Absolutely.
And Dr. Almeyda's keyword analysis backs that up.
It does.
Along with those positive words like union and citizens that we talked about,
Yeah.
there's this recurring emphasis on words like defense, protection, and security.
It's almost like Monroe's saying, hey, things are looking up, but don't get too comfortable.
Yeah.
We still got to be ready for whatever comes our way.
It's a delicate balancing act, isn't it?
Oh, but for sure.
Projecting strength and confidence, but at the same time, reminding everyone that the young nation still has threats to deal with.
Both from inside and out.
Right, exactly.
And it shows how complex leadership can be.
Totally.
Having to inspire confidence and bring people together, but also preparing them for potential problems down the road. It's a tough job.
So those challenges weren't just limited to military threats, were they?
Nope.
What about all the economic anxieties and social divisions that were simmering at the time?
You're hitting a crucial point there.
That'd be good.
While Monroe's speech celebrates this idea of national unity,
Yeah.
we can't forget that this was also a period of huge change and upheaval.
Right.
The population was exploding, the economy was shifting, and westward expansion was putting a lot of pressure on Native American tribes.
Yeah.
And raising all sorts of questions about slavery.
It's a good reminder that even during those so-called good times,
Right.
there were always these complicated and often uncomfortable realities happening.
Absolutely. And while Monroe's speech didn't directly address every single challenge the nation was facing,
Okay.
it did offer some clues about his approach to governing.
Like what?
For example, he repeatedly talked about the need for internal improvements,
Okay.
things like roads, canals, infrastructure. He saw them as a way to connect this rapidly expanding country and promote economic growth.
Makes sense.
A nation as big and diverse as the United States needed a strong foundation to hold it all together.
It's like he was literally trying to build bridges
Exactly.
to connect different parts of the country and create a stronger sense of national identity.
Precisely. And this focus on infrastructure wasn't just about practicality.
I see.
It was also symbolic.
Oh, how so?
It was about building those bridges both physically and figuratively,
Yeah, I like that.
bringing the nation closer together.
That's a great way to put it.
And it's something that still resonates today as we grapple with our own infrastructure problems, economic inequality, and social divisions.
It's amazing how some themes just keep coming up throughout history.
They really do.
Now, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier.
Sure.
The fact that Monroe was the last of the Virginia dynasty presidents.
Right. 4 Virginia presidents in a row.
What does that tell us about the political landscape at that time?
Well, it's important to remember that in the early years of the United States, Virginia had a lot of sway in national politics.
More so than other states.
Definitely, it was the most populated state,
Okay.
and it had produced some of the biggest names in the American Revolution and the founding generation.
So there was this feeling that Virginia was the political center of the country.
Absolutely.
And-
And with Monroe being elected, there was a sense that this era of Virginia dominance was ending.
A changing of the guard.
You could say that.
How did that play into Monroe's message?
Well, his speech reflects that transition in some subtle ways.
Okay.
He puts a lot of emphasis on national unity,
Yeah.
maybe as a way to bridge the gap between that old guard and the new political forces coming up from other parts of the country.
It's like he's trying to smooth over any potential friction.
Exactly.
So this shift in political power, it
Yeah.
must have created anxieties and opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. And Monroe seemed very aware of that. He understood that his presidency was a turning point in American history.
I want to go back to Dr. Almeyda's analysis one more time.
Okay.
Specifically that concept of emotional architecture.
It's fascinating stuff.
We've talked about humility, confidence, and joy.
Right, those core emotions.
But were there any other feelings that Monroe brought up in his speech? Like a sense of urgency, maybe even a hint of fear?
You're definitely picking up on something important there.
Well-
While Monroe's speech is generally pretty optimistic,
Uh-huh.
there are moments where you can feel that caution creeping in,
Okay.
even a bit of anxiety.
Where do you see that?
For example, when he talks about the need for military preparedness,
Right.
you can sense this deep concern for the nation's security
I see.
and a determination to avoid repeating past mistakes.
Like he's saying, we've come a long way, but we can't get complacent.
Exactly.
Got to stay vigilant, stay prepared.
Absolutely.
Face the future with hope, but also with a good dose of realism.
That's a great way to put it. And I think that sense of cautious optimism
Yeah.
is one of the defining features of Monroe's presidency
Makes sense.
and the whole era of good feelings.
It's a good reminder that progress isn't always a straight line,
Nope.
and that even when things are relatively peaceful and prosperous,
Yeah. There are always challenges waiting around the corner.
we've covered a lot of ground.
We have
We've talked about the emotional architecture of this speech
that balance between optimism and caution
and all those unique challenges facing the nation.
at this really key moment in history.
So now I want to get into some of the specific policies Monroe talked about
Okay.
and how his vision shaped America's future.
Let's do it.
One thing that really stood out to me was education.
Education.
Yeah. Monroe seemed really passionate about the need for an educated citizenry.
He did. He believed that education was the foundation for a thriving democracy.
I mean, he even said that the advancement of science and the diffusion of knowledge is the best security for the durability of our liberty.
That's quite a statement.
It is.
And it reflects that core idea from the Enlightenment,
Yeah.
that knowledge is power,
Right.
and that a well-informed public is essential for self-government.
So he wasn't just talking about education in a narrow sense.
Not at all.
He saw it as this essential part of American society,
It was a pillar.
something that would protect freedom and ensure the country's success in the long run.
Exact.
And he didn't just talk about it.
Right.
Monroe actually took steps to support schools and universities during his presidency.
It was a national priority for him.
It's amazing how those investments back then paved the way for the education system we have today.
That's a legacy that benefits us even now.
Another big thing Monroe focused on was economic development.
Of course, remember, this was a time of massive westward expansion
Right.
and a growing sense of ambition for the nation.
And we can't forget that population boom.
Absolutely. It was reshaping the country.
Did Monroe have any specific plans for managing all this growth
He did.
and making sure all Americans could prosper?
He talked about the need for a balanced economy,
Okay.
one that supported both agriculture and manufacturing.
Got it.
And he also stressed the importance of those internal improvements.
Right, like roads and canals.
Those would help facilitate trade and connect different regions.
It's like he was envisioning this unified national economy,
Precisely.
one that would bring the country together and unleash its potential.
And that vision really guided American policy for decades to come.
We've talked a lot about national unity,
We have.
but what about America's place in the world?
Good question.
Did Monroe see the U.S. as more isolationist, or did he think we should be more active on the global stage?
His speech gives us some clues about his foreign policy ideas.
Okay, tell me more.
While he emphasized peace
Okay.
and avoiding those tricky alliances with European powers,
Right.
he also believed that America had this destiny to be
Yeah.
a shining example of liberty and democracy.
Interesting. So kind of like a cautious approach to international affairs,
You could say that.
promoting our values, but also protecting our interests
Yeah.
and not getting involved in unnecessary conflicts.
Exactly. And that approach eventually became known as the Monroe Doctrine.
Oh, yeah, the Monroe Doctrine.
That cornerstone of American foreign policy.
Basically saying, hey, Europe, hands off the Americas.
That's a simplified way of putting it, but yeah.
And while the doctrine itself wasn't officially established until later,
Right.
you can see the roots of it in Monroe's first inaugural address.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how those foundational ideas about America's role in the world were
Well,
taking shape back then.
It really is.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into James Monroe's first inaugural address,
Okay.
what are some key things we can take away from all this and apply to our lives today? Why should this speech given over 200 years ago still matter to us?
I think there are several timeless lessons we can learn from Monroe. First, the importance of national unity,
Okay.
especially in a world that feels increasingly divided.
Right.
It's crucial to remember the value of finding common ground
Absolutely.
and working together towards shared goals.
It's a reminder that despite our differences, we're all Americans.
Exactly.
We share a common destiny.
Second, Monroe's focus on education
Right.
shows us the lasting power of knowledge
Yeah.
and how important it is to invest in future generations.
Education empowers people.
It does.
It encourages critical thinking
Yes.
and creates a more informed and engaged citizenry.
Which is vital for any democracy.
And finally, Monroe's vision of a balanced economy,
Right.
one that supports both individual initiative and the common good,
It's a vision that offers valuable insights for us today.
especially as we face economic inequality and globalization.
Absolutely. It's a reminder to create a system that works for everyone.
It's about finding that balance between free enterprise and social responsibility.
Exactly.
And I think that resonates with the American spirit.
I agree.
This idea that we can build a better future, not just for ourselves, but for those who come after us.
Well said.
That's a powerful way to end our exploration of James Monroe's first inaugural address.
It has been quite a journey
We've uncovered the nuances of this historic speech.
and explored its lasting relevance for us today.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
We'll see you next time as we continue our journey through presidential inaugural addresses and the stories they tell about America